All right, time for me to review Vice. And to get started, I don't want anyone here to panic, but I do believe I have to go to the hospital now. Yeah, I must. What is up, everybody? Random Man here, bringing you my final movie review of 2018, and it is for Vice. Based on a true story, the plot of this biographical dramedy basically follows Dick Cheney, played by Christian Bale, and his desire to become the most powerful vice president in America's history. Going into this movie, I had quite a bit of anticipation to see it. This movie is written and directed by Adam McKay, and I've been a fan of his work for quite a while now. Whether it is going back to his comedic work starring Will Ferrell, like Anchorman and Step Brothers, to hysterical comedies in my opinion, to even his previous work, The Big Short, which was based on the real-life housing market crash of the late 2000s within America. And for that film, he specifically scored a Best Director Oscar nomination and even won the Best Adapted Screenplay Oscar for co-writing it. So now we have Vice, which is also based on another real-life subject matter, which is the rise of U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney. Now, I don't usually get political here on my channel, but one quick look at Dick Cheney's Wikipedia page and one could see that this is a pretty controversial figure. He is often considered to be the most powerful vice president in U.S. history, and his approval rating when he left office was only 13%. So yeah, this guy's not very well liked by the masses. My political views are more liberal, and looking back at the administration that Dick Cheney and President George W. Bush were a part of, yeah, personally, I'm not too big on what happened throughout. But seeing how Vice would turn out as a film had me hooked for the writer/director at the helm here, the cast with Christian Bale in the lead role as Dick Cheney, and how it was shaping up to be from the look of the first trailer released for this film. Starting out with the cast and their performances, we have Christian Bale in the lead role of Dick Cheney. Now, he is one of my favorite actors working in Hollywood today. And giving one look at him at Dick Cheney, and I was just immediately amazed at his transformation to become this real-life figure. I mean, in the past, Bale has been known to be a really hardcore method actor, gaining and losing weight for specific roles, and for playing Dick Cheney in Vice, he noticeably gained quite a bit of weight and also has a bunch of stellar makeup on him to really look like he is Dick Cheney. And throughout the film, I believe that he was also getting his voice inflections down, and also just the way his character arc transpired across the rest of the movie. He not necessarily humanizes Cheney as an individual, but we get to see how he was from his youth all the way to him getting to the White House and becoming vice president. And it is quite a wonder to see Bale become this figure. Likewise with Bale, we have a stellar supporting cast here, such as Amy Adams as Lynn Cheney, Dick Cheney's wife. And like Bale, there's quite a bit of makeup on her as she portrays this real-life individual over the course of a similar period. And Amy Adams is also one of my favorite actors working in Hollywood today. And here, yeah, she can basically do no wrong in my opinion. She is just as extraordinary as Bale. We also have Steve Carell as Donald Rumsfeld here, and I think that he was both hilarious and also quite particular with how he portrayed this individual. And really, it shows that Steve Carell really does have dramatic acting chops, even though we all know and love him as Michael Scott from The Office. We also have Tyler Perry as Colin Powell. There's even Jesse Plemons as the narrator to this film, and he has a specific tie to Dick Cheney within the story, which I will not give away. Basically, I think most of the cast here did exceptional jobs, with a particular notice going towards Christian Bale and Amy Adams. The writing of this film, again, was done by Adam McKay, along with him directing the movie. And as the movie begins, we are presented with Dick Cheney as being kind of a screw-up and really being down on his luck and not going anywhere in life. This is added on in one early scene of the movie where he gets chewed out by his wife, Lynn. But then he does get into politics, and I would say that the way Cheney is portrayed in this movie is as an opportunist. He is somebody who tries to get his foot in the door at any given moment to where he could rise in substantial prominence here. And that both, in a way, humanizes Cheney, but also makes him as somebody that really is of a particular personality and someone that we know is eventually going to do some really big things when he does get to the White House as vice president here. The way this movie is presented in its structure goes hand in hand with the tone and style of this movie, as very much in the same vein of The Big Short. This movie is sort of done in a documentary style where it is also very tongue-in-cheek, to where there's humor present, but also in that it is of a specific political stance. And Adam McKay makes it really clear that he is not a big fan of what eventually went down with the Bush administration, and also just how Cheney is as a character. This, both on paper and direction-wise from Adam McKay, I think was, for the most part, done to a very entertaining angle. I think it is something that I was never bored by. It was always so laser-focused on what it is literally trying to present and make us feel throughout the film. And at the same time, too, I was laughing a lot, as this is a pretty funny movie. The Big Short also had quite a bit of comedy interlaced with a bunch of the serious subject matter that was going on with its plot. A lot of this, I think, has to be attributed to the editing of this movie, as, like The Big Short, this movie is also strung together in a specific way to where specific images are shown on screen to elicit a response out of us, or just to keep the movie engaging and make it run along at a nice pace at a little over 2 hours, about 2 hours and 10 minutes more or less. With the editing of this movie too, and just how everything is presented in this movie from its main subject matter, that is something that is going to get people riled up. In fact, I've already seen that rile up a bunch of people in regards to this movie, as critically and audience-wise, this movie is pretty divisive, not just for how one stands politically, but in how everything is shown in seeing Dick Cheney rise to the eventual power he would have as the Vice President of the United States. Now, given how everything is put together with this movie, again, I thought it was pretty absorbing just in the way everything is presented with the movie's production value, how everything looks in just telling a specific chunk of history, and just how Dick Cheney is presented overall with his family, personal life, and his ventures into politics. This is to be expected from a filmmaker that in the past, recently with The Big Short as well, has made it clear that he is not a fan of conservative politics or anything like that. He's making you see his point of view and shoving it onto us with an adamant stance. And yeah, if you're not on board with that, of course this movie's going to piss you off. For me, as someone who does align more or less with what Adam McKay is trying to say, and just looking at this as a movie overall, it was something that I was totally riveted by. I will admit that at times, though, like The Big Short, again, I'm making quite a bit of comparisons to McKay's previous movie, as I think these two share a lot of things in common. But anyway, like The Big Short, Vice had a tendency to overdo it with its style being presented to us in not just the way political views are shown, but also just on a filmmaking angle, sometimes it did feel like the movie was just doing it to its own detriment, but I never felt like it did that to too much of a fault. And speaking of that too, that also goes into connecting to one of the performances, and that is with the performance of Sam Rockwell as President George W. Bush. Now, I personally enjoyed his performance on the basis that I love Sam Rockwell. I think he is still one of the most underrated actors working today, even after his recent Best Supporting Actor Oscar win for his turn in 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri last year. But here in Vice as George W. Bush, I felt that he almost came off as too much of a cartoon character. I mean, the first time we see him on screen, he is a drunken mess, and just the way he looks as Bush as well with the makeup, even though for the most part, for every other cast member, it is done flawlessly. I didn't think that Rockwell looked entirely like George W. Bush, and then also just the way he is presented as someone who is just a caricature. It makes it pretty clear that McKay is not a fan of his administration at all. But in a way, it's as if Bush is presented this way specifically from Dick Cheney's point of view. At least I assume so, if this was the intent. But yeah, in any sense, I think that was one angle of the movie that did sort of feel out of place, even though I did personally enjoy it to a humorous level, as the rest of the movie did have fitting humor that did go about with its tone in it being both comedic and dramatic. Like this one scene where Dick and Lynn Cheney are in bed together and they're speaking with Shakespearean dialogue, and yeah, that backs up how this movie is in being very tongue-in-cheek. By the end, the way this movie concludes, if it already wasn't clear what Adam McKay's personal political stance is with Cheney and the rest of the administration he was a part of, yeah, the way this movie ends really shoves that down your throat and then some. And there's even a mid-credit scene that is both hilarious because it addresses something that was shown throughout the movie's narrative and also breaks the fourth wall as well, just like the final moment of the movie. This is similar to what one of my favorite movies of the year so far did with its own ending, and that would be with Spike Lee's BlacKkKlansman. The movie concludes with an epilogue showing off real-life footage of the Charlottesville KKK rally from last year, clearly hammering in the point that white supremacy is still alive today. While I thought that Vice's ending was effective in what it was trying to instill within us, I think that because Spike Lee is a more experienced filmmaker in tackling real-life subject matters like he did with adapting BlacKkKlansman's story, it felt more fitting with what he did. I saw this movie with my dad, and he enjoyed the movie a lot like I did, and for him, he thought that it was just a bunch of facts being presented on the silver screen here, as politically, like me, he was not a fan of the Bush administration and all of the stuff that happened in between. Yeah, he made it pretty clear that politically, he said this movie is how it really was in terms of its presentation. We tend to agree a lot anyway. I would say that we agree 80% of the time on various topics, which does include movies. He's a huge reason why I'm into film in the first place. Love you, ba. If you're going into this movie knowing what to expect, especially in regards to your personal views on this movie's subject matter, I think you'll have quite a bit of enjoyment if you check your expectations at the door. If you're someone who knows that they're going to outright hate this movie because they don't align with how conservative politics are portrayed or how Dick Cheney is portrayed for that matter, yeah, I would say stay away from this movie. I mean, as I've said, this movie has already divided critics and audiences both on a filmmaking front and how this movie presents its political views. As for me, though, for all that I have said and more, I definitely recommend Vice. My final verdict for Vice is 4 out of 5 stars. One final note before I end this video. As I said in the intro of this review, this is my final movie review of 2018, but don't fret, as this means my favorites of the year video will be coming very soon as the year closes out, so be on the lookout for that. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of Vice. Social media links in the description. Subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.